Hi everyone, Plastic EP here from Melbourne, Australia. That's right. And I've got one of the greatest authors you can find on the planet, Dave Schwensen. How are
Yeah,
you today, Dave?
I'm good, Plastic. How are you over there in Melbourne?
That's it. Let me tell you, Dave, where are you coming in from?
I'm
Where are
coming
you in
at
the States?
I'm coming at you from Cleveland, Ohio, which is the home of the Rock and Roll Hall of Fame.
That's what we like to hear. And we want the monkeys to get into the Rock and Roll Hall of Fame, but we're going to get into that in a minute. I already know. Show them the
Yeah.
two books that you've written on the Beatles first.
Oh, sure. That's why I'm here, right? Yeah, that's why I'm
Yeah.
here. Sure. Okay, here we go. Here's one. The Beatles at Shea Stadium. Can you see that?
Oh, that's a fantastic book, that one. I love the
Oh,
cover.
yeah, isn't that great? That's taken by
Yeah.
George Orsino at the concert, of course. I have his other pictures are in the books. I also wrote another book called The Beatles in Cleveland. There we
Now that's a
go.
fantastic book too. There's two concerts that they did, didn't they?
Yeah, they did two concerts in Cleveland. Matter of fact, the first concert in 1964 is why a lot of people don't know this, because again, Cleveland is the home of the Rock and Roll Hall of Fame. After the 1964 Beatles concert, all rock and roll shows were banned from the city of Cleveland because of what happened at the Beatles concert.
Now we're going to get into that.
People don't know that.
Not only going to tell them about that, but you went to one of the concerts. There's the fantastic part there. You
Yes,
actually went to one of the concerts.
yes, I saw the Beatles. I saw them live, Cleveland Stadium, 1966, August 14th. My mom and dad took me.
Unbelievable. Now we're talking monkeys.
Yeah, big
So
monkey
let's
fan.
talk monkeys. I believe you did an interview with Mickey Dolenz. Tell me about that fascinating book and what that was about.
Well, Mickey Dolenz, I used to write newspaper articles. I had columns every week, music columns, and the monkeys were coming around. I've got a long story, Plastic, long story. I used to live in
I got
Hollywood.
time.
All right, I used to live in Hollywood. Came back here, started writing for newspapers. Before I started writing, I've written about 6 books right now. But I had an opportunity to interview Mickey Dolenz for a newspaper, and I was real psyched because I've been a Monkees fan. I love the Monkees; they're great. They belong in the Rock and Roll Hall of Fame. So we set up this interview, and there you go, Mike. Mike is the only one I never met, by the way.
Me too. I've never met Mike, but he saw my poster.
All right.
And not only that, hang on, it's coming.
Yeah, I'm waiting. Come on, I'm waiting.
Thanks. That's what I like. A man that understands what's going on.
All right. Nice.
That's signed by Mike. Sorry, that's signed by Mickey and Peter.
Very nice. Very nice.
Thank you.
Yeah, well, I got to interview Mickey for a newspaper article, and we got to talking about the business. And I was writing a business book for the comedy industry. All right, yeah, that's the latest tour, right? That's when they're doing the Mickey and Mike show.
That's when they came to Melbourne.
Yeah, very nice. And you were there, correct?
I still got my ticket. See my ticket in the corner.
Oh, I should have showed you my Beatles ticket. It's hanging up in my office.
Sorry.
We'll do that some other time. I've got the ticket.
Of course, David, of course.
But yeah, anyway, I wound up interviewing Mickey, and it appeared in my first book. I wrote a book called How to Be a Working Comic. It has a lot of famous comedians in it. And I interviewed him for because he'd been on a sitcom. A lot of comedians, performers would like to be on television. And so I had his story in there. Then a couple of years later, the Monkees were coming through again. And so I hooked up an interview with Davy Jones. And both of them were super nice, by the way. I just want to say that. I spoke with Davey. We talked for a long time. And at the end of it, it turned out, and I was in Cleveland, still working in Cleveland. They were starting the concert. The first performance of that concert tour was in Cleveland. And their last dress rehearsal show was going to be in a small, private, secretive club in Cleveland, where the nightclubs were. And Davey invited me and my wife to come to the rehearsal. So I thought, well, yeah, it's great. I'm a Monkees fan. How cool is that? But I figured all the other press people would be there, reporters, big shots, everything else. So I got to this club, and there's a big bouncer standing outside the door like this. My wife and I show up, and I said, I'm here Davy Jones invited me to see this rehearsal. And he says, what's your name? I said, Dave Schwensen. He goes, hang on a minute. And he goes, I hear him going there. He says, Davy's friend is here. Davy's got a friend here, Dave Schwensen. I'm like, no, he doesn't know me. No, he just interviewed him in the paper. He doesn't know me. His friend is here, his friend. And he comes back out. He says, Davy says, can you come back in like 15 minutes? Sure, I'll come back in 15 minutes. So my wife and I went around the corner and walked around a little bit. We came back to the club. He says, oh, yeah, Davy's waiting for you. We went inside this nightclub, okay, in Cleveland. We were the only 2 people in this audience. It was the full Monkees band on a little stage. There were 2 bar stools set up in front of the band for my wife and me. That was it. There was a roadie in the background, and maybe their manager was standing off. We were the only ones there. They gave a whole concert for my wife and me. And it was not, I mean, it was almost awkward because they're singing all their hits. Daydream Believer, I'm Not Your Stepping Stone, I'm a Believer, the whole thing. We took our bar stools, we moved them to the back of this of the floor so we weren't sitting right in front of them. We were like face to face. We pushed our bar stools back and we sat back there in the back of the room. And then they took a break and we're sitting there and Mickey, Davey, and Peter came over to say hello. They were hanging out with us like we were friends. And I had another newspaper article I'd written, so they all signed it. And the next thing you know, Peter took me up on the stage. He was showing me all their instruments. He was showing me all this stuff. I'm talking to him, Peter, and everything. And then I'm trying to remember, we hung around for a little while. Then we split. Then we came back the next night for their concert at a different place. It was a big outdoor venue. So they gave us tickets for the outdoor concert. So that's my big Monkees story. A lot of people don't know that. I had a private concert by the Monkees, my wife, Debbie, and I. Just the two of us, the only two in the audience.
Dave, show me the photo.
Oh, yes. Okay, let me see. Here's the one with Mickey. Okay, Mickey, and that's my son. Now, here's a great photo because my son at that time was 1 year old, all right? See what he's doing? Mickey's got a Beck's beer in his hand. Okay, there's my little son. He's reaching for that beer.
Okay, got you.
And I said, oh my gosh, this is nothing but trouble. I got nothing but trouble in the future. And then here's the same concert. We're backstage hanging out, and that's with Davy Jones. Okay, can you see that?
Unbelievable. What a great looking couple.
There you go. And so I tell my son Paul, who's in the other room right now, he's playing a video game. His first concert he ever saw was the Monkees. How can you beat that? Unless it's the Beatles, which was my first concert.
This is what I like. Hardcore fans of the Beatles love the Monkees. I didn't know you loved the Monkees until we spoke. True?
That's true. It's true.
There you go. And you're telling me stories that any fan would pull their hair out to do a private concert, and no one knows about it except you.
That's right. Yeah, it's just something we did. I tell the people.
I'm just grabbing something. Watch. 1 minute. It's a big one. When the internet started, right?
Yeah.
There's 500 of these. This is signed by all four of them.
Nice.
See that?
Nice.
Signed by all four.
All
88
right.
from 500. I just thought I'd show you that because, being a fan,
yeah,
it's all happening here.
Well, I wish we had known we were going to talk more about the Monkees because I have other Monkees stuff. I got a thing they all signed for me at one of my newspaper articles about them. And Mickey did sign my book. And I don't know where that is right now, somewhere around here.
Don't worry, it won't be the first or last interview because the next one, you will know what's going on. Let me tell you now. All right, so we spoke about...
Here, look at my shirt. See that?
Mickey.
Beatles at Shea Stadium. Here we go.
Yeah, but I just want to ask you now. Tell me about Davey. You had a conversation with Davey about being in the Rock and Roll Hall of Fame.
Yeah,
let's talk about that first.
It was a lot of years ago. Okay,
doesn't matter.
But I said, they deserve to be in the Rock and Roll Hall of Fame, and I truly believe that. I mean, who are two of the most recognizable voices in all rock and roll? Mickey Dolenz and Davy Jones. All right, Paul McCartney's recognizable. Okay, Jerry Lee Lewis, Little Richard, Elvis. I mean, you hear Mickey Dolenz, it's his voice. You hear Davy Jones, it's their voice. And they're singing some of the greatest pop hits in the world. And the beef that they had about the Monkees, well, they didn't play their own instruments. Well, yes, they did. On that poster you just held up, Headquarters, they played their own instruments on there. And I'll tell you what, some of those acts that are in the Rock and Roll Hall of Fame that I love, okay, but I mean, like the Supremes, the Four Tops, the Temptations, they didn't play their own instruments. Okay, I got news for you. Neither did the Byrds on their first album. They didn't play their own instruments. The Beach Boys, all their songs were done by session players. But they're in the Rock and Roll Hall of Fame, so what's wrong with the Monkees? I don't get it.
Yeah, but let me say something now, because, I've been standing back and saying nothing, okay? You know what it is? It's the public out there that love the group like the Monkees. And I'm just saying now, unfortunately, Davey's not here.
Right.
Unfortunately, Peter's not here to see the Monkees going to the Rock and Roll Hall of Fame, which, as far as I'm concerned, should have happened earlier.
Yes.
And my attitude is if Cleveland want the Monkees in the Rock and Roll Hall of Fame, which should have happened a long time ago, the Monkees can do without Cleveland. That's my answer too.
It's not Cleveland. It's not Cleveland. I'll blame the guys at the Rolling Stone magazine, the ones who were in charge, the ones who set this up. They've had something against the Monkees all along. That's everything I've read. I'm not going to mention their names. but it has
That's right.
nothing. It has nothing to do with Cleveland. Matter of fact, you can go to the Rock and Roll Hall of Fame. If you ever get up here, you should visit sometimes because it's fantastic. But you can you can vote who do you think belongs in the Rock and Roll Hall of Fame. Every time I go over there, I hit the Monkees. Boom.
Well, you know what? You're the man, and you know what? We don't have to do a petition to say how many people out there love the Monkees, because the world love the Monkees. So fingers crossed now, you know, that the Monkees get into the Cleveland Rock and Roll Hall of Fame. And I'll tell you what, if they get in, that might be a good excuse for me to come down and visit. And when I'm down there, you and me will catch up.
That's
you
right.
know, they deserve to be there. Mickey and Mike are still going, carrying the Monkey flag, and it's about time. I've seen people on the net write, we want the Monkees in the Cleveland Rock and Roll Hall of Fame. I think now it's about time. I don't care about the past. Put the Monkees in the Rock and Roll Hall of Fame in Cleveland. That's all I'm going to say about that subject.
Okay.
Now, let's get straight into, you may as well talk about the Cleveland one now since we're on Cleveland. Show me the book on Cleveland.
My Cleveland here, the Beatles in Cleveland. Okay, you see that? It's got the poster there. Hey, look, for $3 American money, you could have seen the Beatles. Okay?
That's a great price. Now, tell me what it was like actually going to the concert. Come on, I've got to hear that first.
Oh, well, it was, very exciting. I was just a little kid. I was a kid, Beatles fan. And it was the most exciting thing I'd ever done. I'll give you an example. Throughout my whole career, and I've had a long career, I've worked in New York, I've worked in Hollywood, I did all this stuff. And we would sit around and talk about, hey, what's the best concert you've ever seen? All right. You've been in that conversations before. And I had all these guys tell me, oh, we saw the Doors. Okay, great. We saw Jimi Hendrix. Yeah, that's great. Okay. Then it's my turn. I saw the Beatles. What? You saw the Beatles? Yeah. What was that like? Well, it was like a hard day's night. It was exactly like it. It was a riot. The kids are screaming. They're going to the stage. They're tearing their clothes. It was the whole thing. And I always say that it always tops anybody else's concert experience. I don't care. I saw the Beatles. No matter who you saw, I've seen better. So that's how I feel about it. And the thing about the book, it's actually my third book I've written, but I wrote it for myself because I've been telling this story. Everyone who's interested in pop music and rock and roll, they love the Beatles. They want to talk about this. And I said, yeah, I saw them. They're like, what was that like? So I wrote just one-page thing that put it on my website. See, I'm a comedy coach. I work with stand-up comedians mainly. That's my real job. And I put a one-page review because I've been writing reviews like the Monkees concert. I wrote reviews for that. I've written reviews for, the Beach Boys, Britney Spears, Willie Nelson, all these people. And I did a one-page review of this Beatles concert so I wouldn't forget about it. Okay, and I posted it. And seriously, the very next morning, I had an email from somebody who says, you saw the Beatles? What was that like? Can you tell us more? I'm like, well, all right, here's what else I remember. And I started adding to this and adding to it. I started hearing from fans who were also at that concert, sharing their memories. And then I started researching. I thought, well, I work for newspapers. I'm a journalist. I can find some of these people. So I started digging up. I talked to the promoters and the DJs and the opening acts, all these people that toured with the Beatles and were part of this. And I put their story. So I put the story together of these two concerts. And I call them the notorious concerts because both the Beatles performed in Cleveland twice. Both times the concerts were stopped by the police because the fans got too excited. They got out of hand. There you go. So, and after the first concert, they were banned. They were not allowed to come back to Cleveland. So in their 1965 tour, the Beatles did not perform in Cleveland. They weren't allowed. They were banned. Then they lifted the band in 1966, put them out in Cleveland Stadium, and the same thing happened with fans rushing the stage, getting on the stage, tearing at the Beatles' clothes, just wild. And that's what.
Pardon me.
Are you all right? I thought maybe
exactly.
you got too excited.
Dave,
huh?
Dave, you look young.
Thank you.
I'm not joking. I would never have picked that you went to a concert. How old were you? 5?
No, I don't like. You have to read the book to find out, but I was old enough.
Do you agree what I'm saying? I would never have picked that you went to a Beatles concert. Sorry.
Thank you. I appreciate that.
That's why I was in shock when you told me. I'm still in shock.
Yeah.
And I'm not even a comedian.
Like I said, I got my ticket in the other room over here, but
I believe you. I was too young for the Beatles. When they came in 1964, I was 6 years old here in Melbourne, Australia, when they came with Jimmy Nicol. And then Ringo joined them and they went and played live. And 100,000 people were outside the Southern Cross Hotel up against the glass. And all I remember is on live TV, they were saying they were scared the glass was going to break and kill people. That's how many people there was there.
I've seen pictures. I've seen films that Australia was just wild with Beatlemania.
In South Australia, They had 300,000 people outside.
Yeah.
The biggest crowd they ever had. 300,000 in 1964. That's unheard of. That's half the planet.
Yeah, that's amazing. That is really amazing. No, I've read all about that. I've seen those films. It's wild. And Beatlemania, come on. It was wild.
Exactly.
There was nobody more popular. All right. Maybe Muhammad Ali. I always said the Beatles and Muhammad Ali were the only 5 people I think were recognized by everyone in the whole world.
I just did a great interview with Ivor Davis.
I know
my
Ivor.
last interview, and he was there in the eye of the hurricane.
Yes.
He was there 5 weeks with the Beatles, first American tour. I mean, how do you beat that? He blew my mind.
Oh, yeah.
Seriously.
Yeah, we sat next to each other at a Beatles festival one time to sign our books. He was at that table and I was at this table. So we sat there. So that's where I got to know him. Very nice gentleman. Very nice.
Now, what else can we say about the Cleveland concerts? Anything else you want to add onto your book? Tell me more about what's in the book.
Well, it's a story of the 2 concerts. I mean, it goes back to the beginning of what was going on in the United States, like in 1963, and how, the Beatles came over on February 9th, 1964. They appeared on the Ed Sullivan Show. And really, for the baby boomer generation, everything changed. It was just, everything changed. I always say that the boys' hair got longer, the girls' skirts got shorter. And, the whole music scene changed. And there was a bit of, top 40 radio was very big then, the top 40 AM radio we had. And there was a bit of a battle between the 2 popular stations in Cleveland to sponsor the Beatles. Okay, they went after this. And the second popular station, the one with the less power, they used, fake telegrams. They had some tricks they pulled, and they wound up sponsoring the Beatles concert, not the number 1 station in Cleveland. So they were not too happy about that, the number 1 station. It's a long story. They stole the concert back in the middle. Because what happened was the Beatles came on stage, the police turned around to see what the big deal was, honestly. The police did not pay attention to the kids. They were watching the Beatles, and the kids were climbing over their chairs. They were running down the stairs from the balconies and the mezzanines. By the time the police saw all this, they turned around and they stopped the show. They went up on stage. They pushed John Lennon and George Harrison off the microphones, got them going. The kids, they told the kids everything's going to be canceled. The show's over. But 2 of the DJs from the station that was cheated out of doing the concert, okay, they were there, the morning DJs. They went up to the police and they said, look, we can get these kids to quiet down. They know us from the radio. We get them to quiet down if you let us. And they said, okay, please, anything, because we can't, this is too crazy. And they said, but if we do this, you cannot let the DJs from the other station come back out on stage. So they made that deal. So the other station stole the concert back. Okay. And they went up and they told the kids, go to your seats. They're going to cancel this concert. They were young kids, 10, 11, 12, 13, 14, 15-year-old kids. So get to your seats or this is going to be canceled. They said they counted to 3, 1, and they could hear all the feet going, 2, and all 3. Everybody hit a chair. They started plugging their station, okay, the one that stole the show back. And then the curtain came up and the Beatles came out from under the curtain and they finished the show. But, however, the mayor of Cleveland and the city council did not like how that happened, what happened with the kids going wild. Matter of fact, the mayor told the leading rock journalist in Cleveland, her name was Jane Scott. She's a legend up here. She was very important in the Rock and Roll Hall of Fame getting in Cleveland. He told Jane Scott the reason he's banning not only the Beatles, but he's banning all rock and roll shows from the city of Cleveland because that's not the way little girls should behave in public. You didn't do that in 1964. You didn't act like that. You listened to your parents and you sat down. You didn't go crazy over the Beatles.
What a story. What a story that you're telling me about Cleveland.
Well, I'll tell you another story. I'll tell you one more story that has to do with that because there was one show scheduled to come into Public Auditorium. That's where they did this, Public Auditorium, downtown Cleveland. It's still there. Matter of fact, when Ringo was inducted into the Rock and Roll Hall of Fame, it was the same venue that this happened. And Paul McCartney inducted Ringo Starr in the Rock and Roll Hall of Fame. That's Public Auditorium in downtown Cleveland. Still there. That's where this concert happened. But there was one concert contracted. They had a contract for it, so they couldn't cancel it. They said, all right, we'll let this last concert happen in Cleveland. This is the last one. It was the Rolling Stones. And mommy and daddy were not going to drop off their kids to see Mick Jagger, Brian Jones, and Keith Richards. So with that Rolling Stones concert, maybe they had a quarter of the auditorium filled. Maybe that was it. They brought up all the kids from the back, so it looked like they had more people there. Then that was it. That was it until 1966.
I'll just say a piece of information. Do you know one of the first rock concerts I saw in Australia and I didn't want to go?
Rolling Stones?
1974, I think it was, at Waverley here in Melbourne. and there was a band that came, 4 guys with painted faces, first
Kiss.
time.
Kiss.
How big is that? And I didn't even want to go. And it was $50 a ticket.
What?
Isn't it amazing that I went?
Oh
And
my
I
God.
remember the ticket, it was orange.
I saw Kiss for free.
You must have connection. What was that when they first started?
No, when Peter Criss left the band and they brought in the other new drummer, I was living and working in New York City. Okay, they did their auditions at a place called the Palladium. Used to be called the Academy of Music on East 14th Street in New York City. I know because a friend of mine was a drummer. He went down to audition. He put the makeup on to be Metal Man, but he didn't get picked. They picked, I can't remember the name of the drummer that took over Peter Criss. Anyway, as payback, I want to understand, for allowing them to do their rehearsals and audition there, they gave a concert at the Palladium. Very small venue. I think it only holds about 1,300 people. All these big shots were there and everything. I had a friend that worked backstage. And I thought, well, I'm going to go see. I wasn't a big fan of Kiss. I didn't care. Makeup and stuff. I wasn't into it. So I went over. I said, look, I just want to see. I'll stay around for 1, 2, maybe 3 songs. Let me see the first 3 songs. Then I'm going to go out. It's New York City. I got things to do. I'm going to go out. So he snuck me in, and I sat real close to the stage. I'm just sitting there, and they came out, and I stayed through the whole concert. I was like, these guys were great. And when Gene Simmons blew the fire out, I could feel my eyebrows singe. That's how close I was. And they were flying around on wires and shooting Roman candles off their guitars. I thought, this is great. That's a circus. That's a rock and roll circus right there. So that's my Kiss.
Exactly
that's my Kiss
was.
story.
Exactly.
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
Now, with Cleveland,
yes.
Are we moving on to Shea Stadium?
Well, Shea Stadium's important in there because, again, the Beatles played in Cleveland 64 and 66. So what they do in between there in 1965, they played Shea Stadium.
Let's see the book.
Let me get it right here. Got it right here in front of me.
That's a fantastic cover too.
Yeah, that was shot by a photographer by the name of George Orsino, the late George Orsino. He's passed away, but he took the back picture too. Okay, if you can see that. And the pictures in the book are from George Orsino. Just amazing. His story is in the book because he wasn't supposed to be there. He just wandered backstage. And then before the Beatles came out, he walked out of the dugout and went to the front of the stage and stood there taking pictures. So he's got an amazing story. He has a very famous picture in this book, by the way, that he took before the Beatles went out. And in the picture, it shows Paul McCartney, John Lennon, George Harrison, Bobby Vinton, the singer Bobby Vinton was there, Mick Jagger, okay, Peter Bennett, who's like the #1 promotion man, everyone from Frank Sinatra to the Rolling Stones to Michael Jackson, and the Beatles' future manager, Alan Klein, is in the picture. This was 1965. Brian Epstein was still managing the Beatles. He didn't pass away till 67. There's Alan Klein in 1965 hanging around backstage with the Beatles. So a lot of people don't know that, but that picture is in the book. How about that?
You know, I got questions on Shea.
Yes. Yes, sir.
Stadium. Now, that was their biggest concert, outdoor concert at that time. And John Lennon used to tell all the time, Sid Bernstein, we were on top of the mountain when we did that concert. You've heard those stories.
Yes, yeah. Actually, he said that supposedly to Sid in Carnegie Hall. About 1971, 72, they were at a show sitting next to each other. And John leaned over and said, that concert at Shea Stadium, that night, I saw the top of the mountain. Yeah, from that point on, I think it was all downhill for the Beatles as far as touring. But, I mean, how could you top that? You couldn't top Shea Stadium. It was the biggest crowd they'd ever performed in front of. It was the media capital of the world. I mean, it was New York City. It was also filmed for a television special. Nothing had ever been done like this before. I always say I do live programs, by the way. We'll talk about that too. I do webinars. People can tune in because I'll do a whole hour on the Shea, and I'll show rare films or audio and things like that.
Talk about the last one you just did.
I just did Shea Stadium last week. I did the one on Shea Stadium. I also do one on the Beatles in Cleveland. And see, here's the thing. I do these for live audiences, but we have the pandemic, okay? Everything's quarantined. So I've had to cancel all my live appearances. So what I've done now is I've taken them online, and which is very good because I'm getting people now from around the world. Before, you had to come see me in person, okay? At a Beatles festival or a library or a school or whatever it might be, special event. I'm there. And I show these rare films and I talk it up. I mean, I have fun. I'm a comedy coach. I make it funny. And but now I'm doing them online and I'm getting audiences from around the world. I'm just thrilled. and I'm doing them at different times, different dates. I do one about every 2 weeks. I'll switch back and forth. I'll do the Beatles at Shea Stadium one time, and then in 2 weeks I'll do the Beatles in Cleveland. And I have very rare films of the Beatles. I mean, the Police stopping these shows in Cleveland. I show that to you, and all the insider stories and all. And I make each one different. I mean, like I did Shea Stadium twice in the last 4 weeks, I guess, last 3 weeks. But they're different programs. I tell different stories. So if you tune in,
where do they find them on the net? Where do they find these webinars?
I'll send you to my website, which is, if you go to BeatlesSheaStadium.com or BeatlesProgram.com, it'll take you to the same place. I put my calendar up in there. I took where the dates are coming, and you have to have a link. You have to register in advance. You can't just tune in. Okay, you have to register in advance. You get a special link to join in. And, the program, I do at least an hour.
And that's free?
I'm doing it free right now. We're going to have to start charging soon because the
webinar get it on the free.
Yeah, the free. My next one, I think, is going to be the last free one, I think.
All right, you better make sure you send me a link because I'm in Australia. I can't keep up with the times, man.
Yeah.
The Plastic EP headquarters here has got clocks all over my iPhone. And, I stay up all night sometimes doing LA interviews and this interviews. And I did an interview in Russia.
Nice.
I've tracked them down in Moscow.
Well, we're not exactly on the same time schedule here. It's after 12 midnight here.
Yeah, well, it's 2:25 in the afternoon here.
Wow, it's almost tea time, isn't it?
No, I have dinner about 6 o'clock. And actually, I've got to say, it's my birthday tomorrow.
Oh.
Right, but what happens is, let me explain something. We've got lockdown happening here in Melbourne where you can't have people in your house and that from midnight.
Okay.
You're allowed certain numbers. And that's coming in at midnight. So instead of having my family birthday tomorrow, I'm having it tonight now. It's been pushed. And I've got my birthday specials. I've already got episode 1 and episode 2 on Plastic EP Live TV if you want to have a look. Or you go to Plastic EP. Or you go my real name, Daniel Sam. And you'll see 1960s Monkeys bubblegum rapper. That's me if anyone wants to be my friend out there. And I've already done 2 episodes of the birthday of my birthday show, and we're organizing now show 3 and 4, and I don't know anybody who's been celebrating their birthday for the last 3 months. That's the joke that's been going, and people still want to be on the birthday show, sending me videos. It's amazing. I love them out there.
That's
funny. I met you today.
That's funny. Hey, here's my story. My birthday was about 2 weeks ago, June 19th. And guess what I was going to do on my birthday? We had tickets to see the Rolling Stones in Cleveland on my birthday. That was my band for my birthday. And
did you go?
No, they canceled everything. Everything is the pandemic where everybody's under quarantine. You can't go to no live concerts, nothing. So
how sad is that?
Yeah, I had the Rolling Stones. Again, I'm like, my birthday.
Who organized that for you? Who got the tickets? Your wife?
Yes.
Okay.
But I told her that's what I wanted. Of course.
All right, it's not like they send you free tickets because you're Dave Swanson's.
No, they didn't send me, not the Rolling Stones. I didn't get that. Now, I got a ticket from Paul McCartney to see him review a number of years ago. It was probably 2003, maybe, something like that.
Have you met him?
No. I tried, and they were very nice. He wasn't going to do any interviews or performing in Cleveland, but they sent me a review ticket. So I went there, and I was right there with Paul McCartney. I could watch him right there. So,
I'm going to give you a scoop I don't normally talk about. Do you know who I'm going to interview in a couple of days?
I have no idea. Paul McCartney.
Her name, I'll give you the first name, you give me the second name. Angie.
Oh, McCartney, the sister, right?
No,
yeah, the
stepmother.
Okay. I've seen both of them, I think, at Beatle festivals. And they seem, on Facebook, I see their stuff. They seem very nice. Yeah.
See, Dave, you got it out of me. You made me say it. I normally don't say anything. So there you go. You got the scoop.
There we go. Okay.
Show me your T-shirt.
Yeah, look at that T-shirt. Okay, here we go. I put this on especially for you when I heard we were talking tonight. All right, there we go.
Fantastic.
Yes, we did that.
And as I said, getting back to the Rock and Roll Hall of Fame, the Beatles are obviously in there, aren't they?
Yes.
Kiss are in there, aren't they?
Kiss, yes.
Everybody's in there except the Monkeys, yeah?
As far as I know.
All right, you know what?
What?
It's really good that we mentioned that. So, let's hope Mike and Mickey get into
Well,
the Hall of Fame. And you know what? Mickey just got an award. He got into something now. They're giving him a big award. Do you know about that?
I read something about that. He posted it on Twitter or something. Southern California Hall of Fame, something like that.
Yeah, something like that. Good on you, Mickey.
Mm-hmm.
And this man met you, Mickey, not me. Oh yes, I have met you once. Sorry, I'm waiting. Yeah, don't worry. I got so many people on my bucket list I want to interview. I'm not even going to say.
Well, just keep
Anybody out
knocking
there
them off.
Casey in the Sunshine Band? Hang on. I got to do. I don't have to do this, but I think I'm going to start doing this. I would really like to interview Harry Wayne Casey from KC and the Sunshine Band. I really want to, play Boogie Shoes and all those songs. I really want to interview him. So anybody out there in the world that knows him, Harry, pass on the message. The Plastic EP wants to interview Harry Wayne Casey from KC and the Sunshine Band. Please text me, Daniel Sam, on Facebook, Messenger. I'm waiting to hear your replies. You're so kind out there.
Very good.
Sorry,
good luck.
I haven't do it.
Good luck with that.
You don't know him, obviously.
No.
Okay.
Mm-mm.
All right. Now, with Shea, I've got a few questions.
Sure.
What I don't understand is I'll just tell you something that happened with the Melbourne concert that we're very fortunate about. Channel 9 here in Melbourne in 1964 at Festival Hall in West Melbourne, when the concert was on, they got permission to film it live.
Mm-hmm.
And they filmed it live. And it was done for the Shell petrol here. The company sponsored it. So it was the Beatles sing for Shell. That was the show. And you go on the net, you see it. That's why we have the footage. They never covered it. You wouldn't see it. That's why I want to ask you, I've read a lot about Shea Stadium. And was it the first time then you were able to see it later on cable or something that you could see the show without being there? Tell me about that. I'm fascinated.
Okay. They filmed a television special. There was no cable at that time. It was only network television. And over here in the United States, we had 3 channels, okay? NBC, ABC, and CBS. Ed Sullivan's show was on CBS. That's where the Beatles made their North American debut, the Ed Sullivan Show. When Sid Bernstein scheduled the Beatles to perform at Shea Stadium, he was more concerned with the show itself because nothing on the scale had ever been done before. So it wasn't just the lights and the sound and the stage. It was security. The biggest worry was getting them out of there alive. They knew they can get them in there. They weren't too sure how they're going to get them out of there because they're going to be surrounded by 55,600 screaming fans. So Ed Sullivan called Sid Bernstein, and he said, with his brother-in-law, Ed Sullivan, Bob Precht was his brother-in-law. They had Ed Sullivan Productions, asked if they could film the concert for a television special. And Sid gave permission to do that. So this television special, and I'm assuming you've seen it, the Beatles at Shea Stadium?
I've seen it.
You've seen it. Okay. This was filmed. This is fantastic how this was filmed. All right. At the early 60s, 1960s, that's when they had these big blockbuster Technicolor movies. I'm talking Cleopatra with Elizabeth Taylor. I'm talking Ben-Hur with Charlton Heston. Those were filmed on 35 millimeter film cameras, big cameras. Okay. To put this in perspective, the movies Woodstock and Monterey Pop Festival, those were only filmed on 16 millimeter cameras. So the Beatles at Shea Stadium was a blockbuster filming. They had 13 cameras around the field filming the Beatles. They had 2 16 millimeter cameras following them around everywhere they went. When they came off the plane in New York on Friday, which was August 13th, the cameras were there filming them. They filmed them rehearsing for the Ed Sullivan Show. They filmed them around the hotel. They filmed the press conference. They filmed everything with the Beatles. They deemed that footage to be too boring. Okay, they were going to call the TV special The Beatles in New York. They decided to scrap all that. They were just going to just show the concert. This was after in the editing room they decided this. But they filmed the concert. And long story short, some people don't know this. The Beatles were not happy with the sound. It was supposed to be a Christmas holiday TV special, 1965. Brian Epstein, their manager, approved it, sent a telegram of his approval. The telegram's in my book. Okay, it's there. I got a copy of it. Some of the stuff I have in this book, some of these forms have not seen the light of day since the 60s. I had a guy on the inside, trust me. He approved the airing of the TV special. Then he played a copy of it for the Beatles and their producer, George Martin. And they said no. No, they didn't like the sound. It didn't sound good. They didn't have things in those days like the technology that you and I have today. They could not hear themselves. There were no stage monitors. You know, they heard the amplifiers behind them and then all the kids screaming and all this. And they didn't like, and the sound, sometimes the microphones went in and out, the bass went in and out, you couldn't hear the drums. They didn't like the sounds. They said they're going to overdub it. And the producers said, no, you're not allowed to overdub it because we're advertising this as it happened. So you cannot, it's illegal. You can't overdub it. And they said, well, too bad. That's what we're going to do. You know, we're not going to let it go out like this. So they canceled the special to be shown before Christmas. And then after early 1966, I think it was January 5th, the TV, the camera guys, M. Clay Adams with Clayco Films, they flew to London. They met with George Martin. They did a secret recording session with the Beatles to fix the sound on that TV special. By the time they did that, okay, one of the other TV networks turned it down. They said they didn't want to show it. It's kind of old now. And so they had to go to a third TV channel, and they finally said, yes, they'll show it, but they didn't show it until January 1967. It was only 2 weeks before Strawberry Fields at Penny Lane came out. The Beatles had mustaches and longer hair and the clothes. So it was really like a historical document. That's what it was. It was the Fab Four, the Mop Tops at Shea Stadium, which was fantastic. It was still a great show. But also a lot of fans don't know this either, that all the outtakes, remember I told you there were 13 cameras around that field, all with 35 millimeter film from different angles. The contract Brian Epstein had with them was 6 months after the TV show was aired, all the unused footage had to be destroyed. So it's gone.
Why would you destroy that? How do you know somebody still got it?
Well, there's a rumor, when I was writing the book, there's a rumor that when they did the secret recording session in London, John Lennon requested some of that footage. Whether they sent him any, I don't know. Yoko would have it if there's any out there. But otherwise, they kept to their contract and they destroyed the film.
I've got to ask you, Dave, now, because I've seen different things about the Shea Stadium, and it said pay-per-view. Was that something pay-per-view about the Shea Stadium? Was that just like an advertisement? You can see it when you want it?
Yeah, I mean, that's got to be modern. There was no such thing as pay-per-view in 1966 when this aired. It was on regular network television. It was a regular special, 8 o'clock prime time or 7 o'clock, whatever it was. It was in January. All the kids watched it, and that was it. Then we didn't see it for decades because they never showed it anywhere.
What was the deal between Epstein and Sid? I heard they made a deal, something like any empty seats, Sid would pay more. Is that, you heard that story? Can you go through that?
That's in the book. I got that in the book, yes. Brian said no when Sid first proposed Shea Stadium because the Beatles had never played anything that big before. No one had. Elvis, before he went in the Army, Elvis played a stadium, but he only had 26,000 people. That was the Cotton Bowl in Dallas, Texas. The Beatles had to more than double that at New York, 55,600. So when Sid brought that up, Brian said, no, we're not going to do this. It won't look good for his boys to perform in front of empty seats. Sid, never took no for an answer. He was a real wheeler dealer, okay? Schmoozer is what they call him in New York. He made a deal. He said, for every unsold seat, I'll pay you $10. Money talks. So Brian said yes.
That's a lot of money if there's empty seats there.
Yeah, he was lucky. There were no empty seats. They completely sold it out with no advertising, only word of mouth. There was no advertising.
What's the story about that too? What's the one where they said they had to sell all the tickets by post and you couldn't advertise it? You heard that story?
I got the story in my book. Come on, Plastic. You read my book. You know what I'm talking about.
I haven't read your book.
Oh, God.
I actually think I've got your book. I may already have your book in my collection, but can you go through that story? That fascinated me. The deal was you can't advertise it, so they're selling it through the post.
Yes.
Is that true?
Yes, it's very true. Brian,
tell me about that.
What happened was when you booked the Beatles to perform in the 60s, you met their manager, Brian Epstein, before, when the tour was being planned. All the promoters had to meet with him, and they would pay 50% deposit. What they assumed they were going to make on the concert, 50% of it had to be paid to Brian in advance. Okay? Now, Brian liked Sid because Sid took a chance on the Beatles. He booked them in 1963 already.
Yeah, that's right.
Okay? At Carnegie Hall. So Brian said Sid's got first dibs on New York City. He could book those shows. So they made a deal that the Beatles would open their concert tour August 15th, 1965 at Shea Stadium. However, Sid didn't have the money to give him a deposit. the deposit would have been something like $50,000. He didn't have that money. And the guy, the friend of his who he borrowed money from to lease the big venues, like he gave him enough money to rent Shea Stadium. Okay, get money. He said, Sid, I don't have enough money to pay, $50,000 for the Beatles. So Sid was talking to Brian. He says, well, look, once I sell this out, once I advertise and sell this out, I'll just give you all the money. And Brian says, you're not allowed, you can't advertise this show. It's just like, why? Brian said, you can't not advertise the show without giving me a deposit. It's just, you can't do this. No. So Sid said, can I talk about it? And Brian said, I can't stop you from talking about it. So it was all word of mouth. Sid was booking other shows at that time. He was booking the Animals, Freddie and the Dreamers, Peter and Gordon, Chad and Jeremy, the Dave Clark Five, the Rolling Stones, Hermits, you name it. All the British invasion acts that came through New York, Sid was booking all those shows. So he would go to these venues and he'd go up on stage, or he would stand, as the kids were leaving, they all recognized him because he brought the Beatles to Carnegie Hall and everything. Mr. Bernstein, what's the next show? What's the next show? The Beatles at Shea Stadium. Here's the address. If you want tickets, put your money in a self-addressed stamped envelope. How many tickets you want? Send it to my post office box. So he waited a few weeks. He didn't know if he'd have any mail. He didn't know if this was going to work or not. He went down to the post office to ask if he had any mail, and they gave him like 10 big sacks full of mail. And so he took it back to his apartment. And he had to get high school kids, college kids, interns to open up these envelopes. And his family, they had to open up, take out the money, okay, take the tickets, put it in the self-addressed stamped envelope, and mail it, okay? They sold out. They had to return some of the orders because they couldn't fill the orders. And I'll tell you another little rock and roll piece of fantasy here. There's always this big rumor. I love it when people bring this up. Grand Funk Railroad beat the Beatles record because they sold out Shea Stadium in only 72 hours. Well, guess what? Grand Funk Railroad had Teletron. They were computerized tickets. Sid had to do this all by hand. If he'd had a computer, he would have sold out Shea Stadium in like an hour. Okay, so don't give me that Grand Funk Railroad nonsense. It doesn't work. Sorry. False information, fake news.
Is this fascinating or not? This interview is fascinating to me. You see how I'm on track, whatever I say? A normal person wouldn't even know what I'm talking about. But I haven't read your book.
Well, you got to read it. Come on. It's available.
I will read it.
You go on Amazon. It's all there. You can get a copy on Amazon and other booksellers. It's on iBooks. It's on Kindle. It's all over the place. The Beatles at Shea Stadium.
Now, listen, we're going to wrap it up in a minute, and we're going to do another interview because we just started on what we're talking about. But I got to ask you with the Shea, the stadium, the footage that you see, and they're screaming their heads off, and everyone's going berserk behind the fences, and they flew in by helicopter, and then they got taken out by a meat truck, did they? Is that the story?
It's a Wells Fargo armored truck, bank truck. Wells Fargo bank, armored truck, yes.
Yeah, they probably took all the money with them as they were leaving the stadium.
It was empty. They were sliding around in the back. And you notice on the film, they're wearing little badges. They were deputized.
Yeah, that's right.
Deputized for that day. Yeah, they got badges. There was a ceremony when they got out of the truck.
Now, Dave, what you got to do now is I want you to grab both books, show them again and tell them where they find them. And then I want you to go through and tell them where they find your webinar. And we're going to call it a wrap.
All right, Plastic. That sounds like a good idea to me. First book I'm going to hold up, the one right here, is called The Beatles at Shea Stadium. It's the story behind their greatest concert. It leads all the details. I mean, it starts in 1962. That's how early this concert started. And it goes through the making of the television special and the editing and all the secret recordings and the concert itself, who was backstage, who was hanging around, all the details, okay? It's Shea Stadium. And the other book I wrote was called The Beatles in Cleveland. Now, people think, well, Cleveland, Ohio, who cares? I don't go to Cleveland. Why do I care about those concerts? No, the reason I had to write this book is because these two concerts are so much different than any other Beatles. Both these concerts were stopped by the police because the kids got out of hand and rushed up on the stage. All rock and roll shows were banned from the city of Cleveland, which is now the home of the Rock and Roll Hall of Fame. Think about that. So the full story is in here. Why? And all the different things that happened, the behind the scenes in the dressing room with the Beatles, the planning the concerts, the whole bit. Both these books you can find online. Okay, they used to be in the bookstores, but now everything's kind of online. So I always go with Amazon. I don't know if Barnes and Noble, Borders, or if there's bookstores, but I read everything online. So Amazon.com, you can always find them there. You can go to my website. The books are on the website with reviews and pictures, things like that. The website would be BeatlesInCleveland.com or BeatlesSheaStadium.com. Both will take you to the same place.
If they want it signed, anywhere special they can get an email or something?
Well, they can do that, but I'll tell you what, it's going to cost a pretty penny. It's going to cost some mucho dollars to send it overseas or anything. So I really kind of concentrate on the, continental United States. We get a lot of book orders for that. But otherwise, I say just, get it online. And it's available in Kindle, iBooks. It's on iTunes. I mean, Apple, whatever. It's all over the place. I don't even know. But I know you can get them in electronic books, ebooks, and paperback book. Okay?
How long did it take to write the Shea book?
I wrote another book at the same time I was writing that. It's a strange story. I write comedy books, books on the comedy. So, I mean, it I don't know, 3, 4, 5 years, maybe. I have fun doing it. I don't watch television. I have fun, yes.
Cleveland, how long did that take to write?
Probably about the same time. Well, I can always say 40 years because that's how long I talked about it. I just had to write down my memories. With the research and everything, it took a few years. But, I wrote these books for myself. Really, honestly, I was a fan. And that's all I planned on, me just keeping track. And it just turned into something. Because once I found somebody that had something to do with the concert, I'm like, well, that's great. You give me that inside information. I didn't know that. And they would go, oh, you think that's something? Call this person. And I call them and they say, oh, that's nothing. Call this person. They were all connected. So all the DJs, all the opening acts, the promoters, the reporters, fans, everybody's connected. Okay. And I was getting pictures from Europe. Okay. And all around the United States, different places of the Cleveland concerts that the collectors had. Here's a picture I got. You've never seen this before. And I'm like, well, this is great. And I put it all, and as a fan, I put it together because I enjoyed, I wrote it for myself as a fan would like it. So that's
unbelievable.
Really
now, tell me about your webinar.
Yeah, well, I do a lot of, I coach comedians. I do a lot of personal appearances. I do a lot of speaking engagements, and I'm on stage a lot. And I do maybe about 40 live programs a year on these Beatles books. And they could be for schools, special events, senior citizens, libraries, whatever. If a school, I do some video conferencing, teaching classes, history, that sort of thing. I had a lot of personal appearances coming up for this spring and summer that were all canceled because of the pandemic. Everything was canceled. You can't have big crowds anywhere. So since I teach classes on video, like you're doing right now, we're tech guys, right? I teach classes around the world on this. I've taken my live program and I've turned it into an online presentation now. It's a webinar is what it's called, because I cannot see the audience, but you can see me. And I set it up just like I do the live show. So I'm going to show you the rare concert films. We open with films. Here's, what was going on, and say Cleveland one is very exciting to see because that is film you've never seen. Nobody has seen this film that I have. Okay. I know of only 3 copies in the whole world, and I got one of them. And I got some other stuff, the live shows. And then the Shea Stadium, also, I have the inside stories. I have the original audio, not the overdub stuff. I've got the original stuff. And so that's what, each webinar goes about an hour. And I tell the backstory, what's going on, inside scoop, take you to the dressing room. I'll take you on stage. I'll take you into the stands, what was going on at a Beatles concert. I'll show you the films. I answer questions. I have a blast. I have a good time.
I'm sure the ones who join you have a blast too. Sounds unreal. You got to send me a link next time you do it, please.
I will definitely send you the link. I hope to do one maybe next week. So I will send you, and I do them at different times and days. So I know in Australia it's a different time than what I have here, but I got people from Europe and South America. So I do kind of make it early, late. I give different times. So sooner or later it's going to hit on a time that you can watch it. And you can tell just from talking to me right now, man, it's energetic. I rock and roll. We have a good time.
This interview is rock and roll plus. Those 2 books are fab. You're fab. What can I say? I've got people now have sent me text already. They agreed about the Cleveland Rock and Roll Hall of Fame for the Monkees.
Yes.
People are writing great stuff.
Yes.
I agree. Hello. I'm
getting it. These again, right there. There we go.
Look at that. Show me the Mickey one.
I got Mickey right here. There we go. It's my wife and my son. So there we are with the monkeys. That was around backstage. That was after one of their concerts backstage. So
Now I'll tell you something. Now, do you know Charles Rosenay?
yes, I do. Yes, I do.
Right, Charles will just send a message to you
Yes.
direct now this second.
Yes.
Very good friend of mine who wrote.
Yes.
Beatles and comedy author extraordinaire. So what more do you want after coming on with me? Because you didn't know what to expect, did you?
I didn't know what to expect. And I'm looking through this book right now because I know, of course, I can't find it, but in my thank you section, I've got Charles's name because he was very helpful. He turned me on to a couple of people that put me in touch with people, and I met him one time, I think in Louisville, for the Beatles on the River, whatever it was that we did. So I remember meeting him. Great guy. I'm so glad you're in touch with him. Big Monkees fan too. I know he's a big Monkees fan.
He is, but let me tell you, he's got a big event happening October the 9th for John Lennon in Connecticut. Do you know about that?
I know about that, yes. Go ahead and plug it,
That's going to be huge. So people should go and find out and get tickets for that event because that Lennon 80 Imagine event is going to be huge this year and so many people want to know about it.
Yes.
And we're big fans ourselves. And today's interview was fantastic. And, you know, you really can't say more than that. Those books that you've written, I know you wrote them for yourself, but guess what? The world's going to love your books, so make sure you go and buy it. Now, I just want to tell you about this event, right? Remember Lennon? Imagine 80, Friday, October the 9th, 2020, New Walk Concert Hall, 125 East Avenue, Norwalk. Right? If you want to find out more about it, www.rememberlennon.com, and you're going to see something you've never seen before. That is the event of 2020. And Dave,
and I just want to say, I want to know if Charles is in charge of that. Charles in charge. That used to be a TV show, by the way.
Yeah, that's right. He's running it.
It's going to be fab. It really is. If I was up there, I'm in Cleveland, but if I was close to there, there's no way I would miss that. So yes, everyone needs to go to that.
Well, let me tell you something. I can't leave Australia. If I could, I'll pay my way and I'd actually go there to see Charles, and you'd probably come down there too.
Wait a minute. I thought you were giving me a ticket to Australia for doing this.
I'm not giving you a ticket to Australia. I can't leave Australia. All right, listen, Dave.
Yes, sir.
It's been a pleasure. I mean that. Thank you again. You can say goodbye to everyone and just stay there.
All right. Goodbye, everyone. All you Beatles fans, stay fab. And I'll tell you what's going on in the world today. Just remember the message of the Beatles. Peace, love, get along, all together now. Okay? Remember that. Right there.
All you need is love.
All you need is love. Definitely. Thank you so much. Plastic, thank you for having me on. It was a blast. Thank you.
Thanks, Dave.